Hello, I'm Brad Kelly, and you're listening to Method and Madness. This is a show about books, the people who write them, and the labyrinth to be explored between the words.
Have you ever heard about Willie the Weeper? Had a job as a chimney sweeper. He had the dope habit and he had his band. Listen while I tell you about a dream he had.
Okay, today I am joined by the great Andrew Edwards, author of King of Dogs, which I highly recommend and which we're going to be talking about in this episode, and the man behind the Warhorse podcast. Mr. Edwards was kind enough to have me on his show. What was that, like 6 months ago or more, maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
Like
I think
late,
it was.
late 24, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm very, very pleased to have you on. So thanks, Andrew. Thanks for your time. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for talking to me. I really do appreciate it. Before we get too deep into things, I know you've got a new writing project that we were talking a little bit before we hit record that is nearing completion, a book called Crowbar, and there's a crowdfund for this because you're trying to, as so many of us are in this space, we're trying to make things happen. So I guess first, for King of Dogs fans out there who maybe haven't been plugged into social media enough to know that there's the crowdfunding thing going on, tell us a little bit about the crowdfunding thing, and then I want to talk about the book itself.
Okay. So the crowdfunding thing it's just sort of, ad hoc. You have these options like Gifts and Go and, Kickstarter. They all take 8%, which
Yeah.
I don't know, if you're looking for a significant amount of money, it starts to sort of, so I'm just doing it mostly through Substack, and essentially the deal is, I will I will provide supporters a signed copy of the first edition, and then I will swear to never sign any others.
That's
As
cool.
well,
Yeah.
there's a couple of other kind of bonus rewards thrown in there people can check out, of probably varying interest. I think the main point with, supporting projects like this is we're in many ways like, we're fighting in a fractured position, whether you consider that cultural, or just purely from a literature point of view. And, I think that the other side would think that they're fighting too. Maybe it's just ultimately about great work. Maybe it's, I don't know, more than that, political or what have you. It doesn't, in terms of this literature, like that's not where I'm coming from. But it, hopefully, people see the value in supporting projects that are 100% organic. I didn't have, no offense. I know you have an MFA,
Yeah.
and I actually tried for an MFA, but I was not allowed to get one. But I don't, it's entirely grassroots, as they say. So maybe
Yeah.
that
No.
alone is enough to check it out at least.
Well, that's awesome, and the world needs another Andrew Edwards book for sure. So, yeah, please, there'll be links in the show notes. But please, if you can spare some money, support great work. I mean, this is part of the reason that I do this show is I want to spotlight, people who are talented, and who've written great stuff, and maybe in the future made other cool things, and try to get this stuff out here. I mean, this is part of the cool thing. One of the cool things about the internet is we can kind of just do things. So, we could
Yeah,
just put this out there, and folks listening, check it out. The book itself is called Crowbar, correct?
correct.
Yeah. Give us a little bit, a little taste of what Crowbar is going to be.
Yeah, so I've been conceptualizing it as sort of like, James Elroy meets Herman Hesse,
Nice.
or Michael Mann, Miami Vice meets Mulholland Drive.
Okay.
I know you have a lot of, actually writers and readers in your listenership, so they may be interested to know that, you know how you put certain constraints on a project, and sometimes this actually comes to almost define the project. And I found, like, one example is just not using adverbs. It forces you to move clauses around and to construct different types of sentences. I wanted to do like a 200-page burner that just like dropped you in at, like, as if the Ferrari is already going 90 and you were just dropped in, and then it doesn't stop until the last page. And so I found that was it was fun, but it's a challenge too. All these types of uh, choices you have to make. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's set in the 80s, in
Oh, cool.
1982, and it sort of follows these two Rhodesian mercenaries who take effectively like a bagman job. Um, they they're very quickly wrapped up into MK Ultra, Stanford Research Institute, the internet. Robert Maxwell, makes an appearance, who folks will probably remember as, the father of Ghislaine. Epstein
Yeah.
is in the news, I think, again today.
Yeah, it turns out that he didn't do anything, I guess.
I apparently were all.
Okay.
Yeah, my bad. Sorry about all the slander, dude.
Case closed, everybody. Yeah,
Yeah,
everybody can go home. Nothing happened. Nothing to see here. Yeah.
absolutely. Sorry about that.
No, yeah. Sorry, I derailed you there.
No, it's fine. God, it's unbelievable. Um, and since we're like plugging novels, my pal James Polos he calls it like the world's only or best or original Epstein novel, and
Oh,
I think it's called this may sound crazy, and it is worth checking out.
okay,
It's
cool.
very I thought it was very good. He's made no effort, to publish. He's got a lot of other stuff going on, but if you're into the Epstein thing, that's a great novel. But anyway, the other great novel, Crowbar, it's pretty much just that. It's like a high speed burn through the 80s. So there's tons of cocaine, there's tons of
Excellent.
degeneracy,
Excellent.
and then you know it it sort of winds out in you probably struggled with this too, like realism versus, like, what is realism? I mean, I can't even, I can kind of allude to maybe there's a supernatural, but,
Mm.
and in this case I just decided, even though King of Dogs was very much walking that line of realism versus, supernatural, in this case I just threw caution out the window and went for it. So
I like it.
we're crossing many worlds, again. So within 200 pages, um, I think it's going to discombobulate, but also yank readers forward. We'll see. I'm
Awesome.
excited. Yeah.
That sounds great. And I know based on the quality of King of Dogs, like that sounds, taking that and then putting it into the context you just gave it, that sounds awesome. And there
Thanks.
is, yeah, there's something yeah, I'm kind of working on something, context and setup very, very different, but the one thing that's very similar is I'm shooting for shorter than any long thing I've written, like 120. It's probably more like 150 pages now. But yeah, just like action. It's just gonna start and it just goes, and then it's over.
Yeah.
And trying to just make it as sort of and now the fact that you're thinking this way, and I'm thinking, and I've talked to a couple other people, sort of in group chats and stuff, that are also sort of thinking in their fiction writing in these terms. It does make me kind of wonder if there isn't something afoot. I do think that sort of styles and like trends and styles, right? There's movements in literature. I do think there's a way in which, to all the people doing them who are actually participating in them, it feels like it was their own idea. And yet there's these weird correspondences that I don't know how they're being communicated to each other exactly, but like it's like, that notion of like, what is it, like 4 people discovered the steam engine within a few years of each other or something like this, you know? I think there's something in literary styles and changes that maybe is similar to that. Everybody's kind of, a lot of people are sort of feeling the same thing and responding to it in comparable ways, unconscious of each other to a certain degree. So anyway, that's just to say, Crowbar, definitely looking forward to it. And, I'll be posting it. And like I said, folks, if you want to contribute to that crowdfund, there will be a link in the show notes. I want to talk a bit more about King of Dogs, because I've read King of Dogs and I love it. It came out in 2019. So is that right? 2019?
Yes, it came right at the end of the year, like
Okay. Yeah.
December
Yeah.
5th. Yeah.
Right. So you might be sick of talking about it, but I'm not. So let me just to kind of, for people who haven't read it, I'm just going to read the back cover copy, and I think that'll at least give people enough of a kind of touchstone. And I've got some questions for you about it as well. Um, this is just off the back, and I think it sets things up pretty well, actually. As a Soviet-style collapse unfolds in America, Grayson, equal parts philosopher and warrior, but legitimately neither, makes a deathbed promise to watch over a couple with a child on the way. Driven by his own severe loss, he must make good on his promise and carry the psychic consequences as he races headlong into the fallout of our imploding civilization. Set in the hallucinatory desert Southwest, populated with hunter-killer teams, awash with refugees, third country mercenaries, and hostile, conspiring elites, King of Dogs pits the beauty of language and Western philosophical ideals against the deep depravity and violent decay of our times. And I can tell you, it delivers on the promise of that premise for sure. It's, just my kind of take on it quickly. This book combines a lot of elements that I really love. I mean, it's deep and it's heavy, but it's also suspenseful. It's poetic at times, very much so, and beautiful. And I think if you were to just read that back cover copy, you might not expect it to be as beautiful as it is at times, and it legitimately has moments of total literary beauty. And this might, I'm not sure exactly how to phrase this, because I think at the first part of this opinion, it's not going to sound awesome, but it's not cheap. And what I mean by that is there's a way you could describe what happens in King of Dogs, and it could sound like another airport thriller. And it's not that. It has some of the same DNA of like, I don't know, something like Terminal List or something like that, right? But I like it way, way more. It's going to be way more rewarding to the sophisticated reader than anything else you're going to find on that shelf, while still having some of that same muscular energy, violence and terror and action. So it's got a little bit, for, I think any dude would appreciate reading this book, and probably a lot of women too. Uh, so, um, so, I guess where I wanted to start, I sometimes I like asking sort of the dumb question and seeing where that leads. If you can remember back, what was the first thing in this book for you? Like, I don't know if it's the first image or the character or the first part of the premise. Like, do you remember like what the initial seed was of this book?
Yes. And it kind of goes back to one of the ways that you described your read of it, where I had 2 ideas. One was to take like an action movie, just whether it's like Predator from the time of our youth. These are the movies I know, and some of the even cheesier ones. I mean, First Blood was a big is kind of figures in terms of influences, but I had this idea like, what if you just took an action film but then you crammed it into a truly literary novel. So instead of Cormac McCarthy, where there's some pretty intense action, like in that first one, All the Pretty Horses, the Border trilogy, um, but it's closer to like, I don't know, strict. If you were to make a film of it, it's closer to just drama.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
And so that absolutely informed. And then to the extent that I feel like I achieved the goal, uh, that was how I measured it. Was is this an act, not an action like I've never read an action novel. I don't know if there is such a thing, but an action film that we experience this way, and then I'm going to, like you said, sort of splice it with DNA almost. Like, what are these elements that would make this possible? It took a lot of doing, obviously, but the other thing I had was the book is set in Moab, Utah. I lived there a few years, and there was a moment, from my real life where I was working with my pal, and we were we were making these irrigation tubes, and you use these. Yeah, it was kind of new to me at the time. For whatever reason, there was something like in that moment of memory that actually happened. That was one of the first scenes I wrote, and I had absolutely no idea. I never really do, where I'm going. The first draft is usually just more like channeling something. Yeah, this seems like a good idea. Let's take it there. I'm guiding it, usually to the main plot points. But that, of course, results in like a first draft that nobody ever sees, almost entirely. I don't think it's. I remember holding on to one word, just like through the whole process, just to say that, well, one word made it
Yeah.
from conception to like 40 drafts later. But
Right, right, right. Yeah. I mean, that's part of the fun. That process, I'm familiar with it too. It's arduous, but there is a sort of, it's kind of fun in a way. Like, if you're not feeling the pressure to get the thing done in the moment, there is this sense of like, I think it's easy, and I mean, I'm guilty of this too. As a reader, you pick up a book and you really like it, and it's you don't necessarily it can kind of seem like it just was hatched, like came out fully formed, and you don't really sense like how many changes the thing has gone through, and how different it may have looked at one time or another. It's and the thing that's kind of interesting is I spent some time in the Harry Ransom archives in Austin, Texas, which is one of the big literary art. This might be the biggest literary archive in the world. Some oil man like decided he was going to spend millions of dollars to build the biggest literary archive in Texas, and you read like you pick up you go into the archives of like Don DeLillo, and you pull out you ask for a box that's like his first draft of Underworld or whatever, and you're like, oh, he had no idea what he was doing either. That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Good, because he's way better. Like, he's way better than me. So if he didn't know, there's no reason in hell that I should know what I'm doing, right? So it's kind of
absolutely.
yeah, it's kind of gratifying to see that, and be exposed to the fact that that's kind of how this works. Uh, I love the setting of this book. I mean, Moab, Utah, for people who haven't been there, is one of the, I mean, landscape wise, is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It's unbelievable. What you know, tell me about give me a little of your of your Moab time. Like, what did you what was your experience of Moab?
When I lived there, this was like, I think, 04,
Mm-hmm.
06. And so if you throw yourself back, like, uh, in terms of the psychosphere, the zeitgeist, that was a time where we really didn't. I mean, we had a sense that things were on the path, that they were on. Here we are. Um, but the iPhone hadn't hit yet, and
Goodness.
YouTube had not hit yet. The internet, I remember going down to a little cafe, like a coffee shop, to use the internet on Sunday. That was it. You know,
Right.
that
Check
was.
your email. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe order a little something, figure out this super convoluted way to use my credit card. Like, I
Right.
hope this works.
Right.
But people, the Zoomers and whatnot, they don't realize, like, I mean, this stuff was like the other day to, in reality, it was, not that long ago. So
Yeah.
that was kind of um, the cultural time, but I've been back to Moab and I've seen that it as with a lot of things like the internetification or globalization or whatever the effect was, some of the things that were kind of tolerated about Moab were have become they've almost come to define the place. So
Mm,
even though like the natural beauty has been preserved, and that's the reason to go. There's a little bit more. It wasn't as touristy, I think, is where I'm going. That was how that town ran then for the most part and how it runs now. But it was very much a season. So you had maybe 6 weeks in the summer where you just kind of stayed home or do your shopping early and avoid like the little mini traffic jam. Um,
yeah.
but it's it is like a phenomenal place. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, where we have no shortage of water, and uh, to see some of the things that I saw in the natural world were, I mean, etched in my memory till I die. Like to sit up on a hill and see, um, like a lightning storm hit that, just assault. There's this rim that, for people who don't know, the it's in a little valley and there's like a rim on both sides. It's like a rock. It's just one massive rock that kind of bends through town. And I think it was like August or something. So you have that the heat plus the humidity in the desert, which is completely alien, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
this completely otherworldly display. There were tons of things like that, I don't know, just meeting lizards and birds and
Yeah.
odd stuff, hiking, and but if you actually leave the town of Moab, there's no end to some of the most freakish shit that you can see on planet Earth
Yeah.
is in Moab. I mean,
It,
stuff that's just
yeah.
like you have to sit there for days and ponder it. Like, why? Like, how could this be here? This like Goblin Valley and
Right.
but
Right.
but honestly, like every little turn in the road, some random BLM road is probably loaded with something very cool too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's one of the most. I took a couple trips there. I lived in Idaho for a while, from like 2006 to 2010, and I took a few trips down to Mo. I've been traveled around quite a bit in that part of the country, and yeah, it's so there's really nothing quite like that part of the country. It's kind of amazing, and it almost does have like a little bit of like a psychedelic effect, because it's just like, oh, so
yeah,
the planet does this, it also does this. Because yeah, I'm I'm from Michigan, and in Michigan land, it's got its beauty, it's got lakes and that kind of stuff, but for me all of the sort of beauty of Michigan is pretty conventional. It's like you've got trees and you've got a lake, and it's nice to look at, and hey, when the colors change in the fall, it's pretty cool. But like then you go out to Moab, and it's like, this looks like a 70s acid rock cover, like, or something. Like, this is a
yeah,
totally it's a
yeah.
totally different thing. It's pretty amazing. People should check it out, but try not to be an annoying tourist. That's, I don't know if that's possible to do. But so, do you find I'm always curious about this, because I do think people have landscapes that resonate more with them than others. Some people are beach people, some people are, you know, snow people. Do you feel like, Northwest versus Moab versus other parts of the country you've been in? Do you feel like one of those speaks to you more than the other?
That's a good question. I've thought about this quite a bit, and going back to Crowbar, and again, not really having a plan, just trying to sit down and uh, clear the vessel to let the Holy Spirit move through me.
Yeah.
I wound up writing entirely about the West Coast, and it was almost all on the coast.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah.
And I think that you may agree with this idea because you've traveled and you've lived, I mean, some pretty distinct places.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that there's something about also this. You hear this like in academic literary circles. Oh, it's like they try and are always like locating place and like as if this is somehow. I don't quite buy it. To tell you the truth, like I don't quite buy it. I think you could grow up in the Pacific Northwest, move to New York, and write the great New York novel.
Yeah.
You could grow up in New York and write the great New York novel. I don't quite buy the simplicity of that. But I do believe, or I've come to believe that where you know this term, you probably do know this term, and the audience may be interested, the objective correlative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't know about this until not fairly recently, but it makes a lot of sense that if you for the audience, it's basically it's almost like a form of symbolism where you're kind of buttressing the emotional or interiority the level of your novel with that material level as well. So if something is really bad in the house and someone drops a glass, like maybe that's a simple way
Yeah.
to get there. But place might be the ultimate kind of objective correlative.
Yeah.
And in terms of the hallucinatory piece, like I would agree 100%. Like whether I don't even know that if you lived or like you were from Moab, you would have to still kind of understand this place has there's something about it that's just drawing it out of you at like the minute you wake up, you look out and you're like, yeah, this ain't normal. This ain't like it's
Right.
and that's just to say, I don't know if I answered the question exactly how you wanted, but um once you continue to kind of grind through those drafts, um, it's almost stupid for me anyway to resist it. Well, this is the place. You hear this a lot. Well, the setting is a character too.
Right.
Ah, okay, but I mean, there's so much offered that you can because that is how we live. I mean, it's like 90 right now where I am at, and it's dry, and where you're at, I think it's 90 and humid
Yeah.
probably,
Yeah.
and to deny the fact that this is totally oppressive to me, and like every choice is silly. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I think that's all very interesting, and yeah, there is something about the objective correlative of a place. I was just not too far from me. There is a very large marsh that covers several thousand acres, and my wife had never. There's really no reason to go that way unless you really really want to. From where I am, anything you might want to do is sort of the other direction. And for whatever reason, we headed up that way this past weekend, Fourth of July weekend, and my wife had never been that way, and I spent a fair amount of my youth near there. And not that the marsh really spoke to me, but I remember as we were going through there, they're like, this does feel different than 10 miles away did. And it's like water and reeds, and your mind starts to go to different places and activate sort of the different potentialities of what it could be. And it sort of feels like the people are living in the space a little bit differently than they were, you know. There is something to that. And I don't think of it, yeah, I don't know that you don't want to be too precious about it, I don't think, but there is something like, there are stories, I think, in different places that start to make more sense. And I mean, part of the how powerful King of Dogs is you do have this, sort of start in Moab and the surrounding areas, and there's a lot of the story is about pursuit, being pursued, being and pursuing, and there is something about that landscape of the desert that there's a kind of, I mean, I guess, do you even call, is that even that is desert, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
the sort of sand dune infinite sand version of desert that you might imagine, but it's definitely desert, super dry, it's not hospitable, it's it's incredibly dangerous if you're not prepared for it, right? If you were to just wander out into it without taking precautions and without knowing exactly what you were doing, you could be in serious trouble pretty quickly. And all that danger, you've done a really good job of like capturing all that danger. One of like, there's a lot of aspects of this book I love, but there's like a couple times, the Grayson, the main character, he's he's pretty much running solo for most of the book, and so he's strategizing and thinking his way through his sort of next steps. And there's this point, I I don't know if I have it actually tagged, but it says something like he's kind of talking to himself, and he says something like, "If you keep going this way, water is going to be a real concern," and you can kind
Yeah.
of feel that, like, yeah, like. So he might get gunned down, but literally, if nothing happens with other people, he could just die in the next day just from heat and exhaustion and not having enough water. And those stakes are super high, and that's one thing I kind of love about this book. I think one of the things, this is sort of a tangent. I mean, I think one of the things that gets you you know that the sort of MFA thing gets sort of uh, gets kind of bashed, rightfully so, in my opinion. I think there is a lot of similarities in a lot of that work. But one of the things that I think is to the detriment of sort of the cliche MFA writer is the cliche MFA writer is not very good at making the stakes high enough to care about. Oftentimes, it's sort
Oh,
of like
yeah.
it's sort of like there's the Cormac McCarthy thing about like I only care about stories where people are going to die, basically, or
Yeah.
or they could die, right? And I think there's something to that in this sort of cliche MFA stuff. It's like your stakes are like somebody's gonna break, like you're gonna get a divorce or something, which for an individual person is high stakes, but like
Yeah.
isn't it doesn't really translate necessarily across to the audience, right? And
Right.
King of Dogs has huge stakes, and it's got stakes not only in the moment to moment of our individual character surviving, but he's lost a child, and then he's made this promise to his friend that he will basically take care of his friend's brother's kid and
Right.
family,
Yeah.
and and these are huge stakes. A promise being taken very seriously that involves the life and death of other people. I think I know women have this feeling too, but I know like as men, when you sort of take that thing
Oh,
on, where you're going to be the protect. It's on you to protect a person. Uh,
yeah.
I laugh about this. There's always this joke about you know there's always this joke about like you'll see this on the internet, like of dads who said they didn't want a dog, and then 2 months later, that dog's like in their lap, and they're like feeding it treats.
Yeah.
And I mean, I always say it's like the reason the dad didn't said he didn't want the dog is he knew that's
Yeah.
what was going to happen, and it's like
Yeah.
the only way you can prevent that. Like our plates are full. I'm going to fall in
Yes.
love with this dog, and it's going to become critically important to me that this dog is taken care of. Now, if the dog doesn't exist yet, I'm not responsible. But as soon as it comes under my purview, that's like almost like a religious aspect of my life to take care of this thing. And I think, it's interesting. I think that aspect of what men are like is often misunderstood. I feel like how serious you can take that, because we don't necessarily gush, and we're not necessarily super vocal about our emotional feelings. But like what Grayson's doing in here, I don't think the word love shows up in this book anywhere. Maybe it does here or there, but this whole book is an act of love by Grayson, and that's one of the things that I liked about it so much. Is it's hyper masculine in a lot of ways. It's tough, it's action packed, it's about violence, all of these things. But at its heart, it's Grayson is like it's an act of love. And even the child he's ultimately protecting, it's not like he even really knows that child. It's he's agreed, he's assented to that this is going to be his responsibility. And I don't know, that's one of the aspects of this book that's so beautifully done, and so kudos to you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. One of I want to ask, here's sort of another, like, again, asking kind of the stupid question. What is your favorite aspect of this book, King of Dogs? What's the thing that
Ah,
you like remember the most, or makes you smile the most, or
well, that's a really good question. I could, you give, you know this, like, you give so much. I mean, a book like that is a little bit different than Crowbar. For the audience, if they're interested, Brad and I were talking offline, uh, that Crowbar comes under a sort of like Dostoevskian pressure. You know, he famously had all these gambling debts and other sorts of, like, he had to produce to put food on the table, quite literally, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time that I wrote most of King of Dogs, like that was, I had a different relationship with free time, uh, and with my own, like my own ambitions, and and all that kind of swirled into, you know, it's a different, maybe a talk for a different time. It kind of it turned out differently than I had imagined. And so I think in looking back, I'm really, like, I there's plenty of just sort of surfacey kind of topical bits and pieces, but I think what I'm most happy with is that I managed to hit the whole thing. Like, if you were to say, is this a complete novel, like the best you can do? I'd say, frankly, it probably is. It's
Mm.
probably, whereas, you know, with other, you look at, let's take McCarthy just because we're both super familiar with him.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us would say no. You guys did a great episode actually on No Country.
Yeah.
Like, No Country for Old Men, I think, is a masterpiece.
It
Uh,
is. Yeah.
it's not the same novel though as like, just if we take the Border trilogy as one. I mean, the dude is reaching to he's scraping like the outer surface of his, like his entire being.
Yeah.
Whereas in No Country, it's almost as if, I understand, our mutual pal Aaron Gwynn, uh, I think, clued me into this fact that the book was like 600 pages, and Amanda Urban came in and whittled this thing down to this ultra, you know, tight. I mean, she kind of deserves as much credit as El Maestro in this case. And that's all just to say, I think I was pleased that I could have the experience maybe of saying, so well, fuck me, man. So that's what it takes to write a novel. Like, man, that
Right.
is, like, because uh that, I mean, honestly, that maybe not like the cutest, like, answer, but that's really what I'm like, you could never take this away from me. Like, I went to the
Yeah.
absolute bottom of the fucking barrel, and all of those cliches, you know, sit down and bleed, and it's only about your soul. I realized, like, man, that guy was. You can write a great novel that you probably don't have to give away a part of your soul or heart to achieve,
Hmm.
but some of them anyway you do. And
Yeah.
I would say with King of Dogs, like, that'll always be, and no matter if I don't write any more novels or I write 100, um, that's my favorite thing about it. Is it, I just, maybe maybe I'm going overboard here, but you're probably familiar with David Mamet,
Yeah.
um, great playwright. He had, I think it was him that kind of put this in my mind, where he was saying that the writer has to essentially go on the same journey that the protagonist goes on. And at first, it took me a while. Like, it took me maybe even a couple months to be like, what are you talking about,
Right.
dude?
Right. I'm
Till I
just writing
realized,
words
like,
on a page. Yeah.
yeah, like, what do you,
Yeah.
and then I realized, oh, okay, so I'm having to engage with this uncertainty and the challenge, and I have, in the same way that my hero has to do this. Like, the
Mhm.
hero has to go and get the jewels in order to pay off the guy to get the fancy sword or what have you, whatever the MacGuffin train is. It's kind of like that for you as the writer. Like, oh man, I've got to go and read these 3 or 4 books right now, or I'm never going to approach what I'm trying to achieve. Or I have to put this down for 6 months to a year. Like, one of the things I did for King of Dogs was, I spent like I spent about 3 years training, like every day a lot
Wow.
to become like a great tracker.
Mm.
I went and I was hired on at one of the very few kind of uh, defense contracting outfits that purvey the skill. Like I got that good,
Wow.
and
Wow.
it wasn't the sort of thing where I didn't know these two pieces fit together perfectly, but I realized like no, that's what David Mamet meant. If you take it to the extreme, you don't really know what all you have to do in order to generate like the power or the juice or that's what I usually call it is just like juice. Like
Yeah.
I want to sit down to write and I want to have like this electric thing that is tappable, and it's not just me simply thinking but some days it is, when you sit down to write
Sure.
it's like I don't know, dude. I'm just gonna have to bash my way through today and hope for the best on the rewrite. But
Yeah.
yeah, that I totally forgot the original question, Brad. But
No, that was awesome. No, you're giving me exactly what I want to hear, and I know what you're talking about in terms of like it's a it's actually a book, right? And it seems
yeah,
like I'll tell you the best compliment or best encouragement I ever got from somebody writing was a writer I respected. Uh, had read his book that I wrote that nobody's read that's never coming out, but it was sort of my apprentice novel, right? And he just told me he wasn't he was I don't even think he liked it that much, but what he said was this is a real book. And I was like, oh shit.
yeah,
It's like it wasn't even this is good, this is great, anything. It was just this is a real book. And I was like, oh damn, I actually did it. It makes
yeah,
sense and it like holds together and it doesn't feel like I copped out or I went the easy way. Like, yeah, man, it's no joke. It's a and that's and it comes across on the page for sure. So that's yeah, I totally get it. I now I'm really interested. I wanted to get into this territory, but so the tracking stuff, and this is a big component of King of Dogs, and I mean I wouldn't be able to fact check any of it anyway, but it's a big component, and it feels super authentic. So you actually sort of the book was sort of conceptualized before you sort of learned the tracking stuff. Is that what I'm understanding, or is it
well, yeah. I had maybe like three drafts,
okay?
um, and it wasn't it. That's what I mean with the idea that, pardon me, I really can look back in retrospect and see that my ambitions and my impulses were pure, but I didn't almost know how to put the pure impulse into a profane, impure world. I also
Mm,
knew, like, at this time, I mean, even though I think I started this in 2007, right at the end of that year, because I recall the Obama thing was like, I mean, I had I had completely checked out of like the whole notion of participating in society in a normal way was really I was still wrestling with it, but I mean I was all but done. And I understand that's not most people's experience, but that's going back to that that kind of maybe it's a 90s ideal where it was again like, do you have a plan B? Well, you're probably going to take the plan B. And so it's like,
right.
well, man, without a plan B though, that's really dangerous, and I could really get fucked up here. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, dude, that's the real game. And it's like, whoa, fuck. I'm not sure if I really, but what really happened, and I don't know, there's probably many other cases of this, but I don't know of one, was it was me wrestling with the purity of my impulse in this profane sort of existence. I had gone back and forth to college, and I remember sitting in this would have been in the 90s, like sitting in this philosophy class at University of Oregon with no offense to any feminists out there. I'm just saying that this is some really convoluted sort of, like this isn't like 101 or even
Right.
301, but it was like, why don't we just read Plato and talk about it? But it was, no,
Right.
this is like Plato and this queer, like what the fuck, dude? I don't need this. I haven't even
Right.
read Plato yet.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
it was started dawning on me like, is there maybe like a prejudice against the fact that I'm just like, I don't know, I'm not a great guy, but I'm okay. Like I'm not gonna hurt you for no reason.
Mhm.
And is there like a prejudice against the fact that I'm straight, white, and maybe like halfway intelligent? I'm just wondering. At
Right.
about that time in the timeline, I'm like, what the and anyway,
Mhm.
that that's really, I think, to say like, as I wrote the book, it was kind of learning like, dude, it's almost like no matter how good it is, they're going to shit on it and they're not going to take it. Which started
Yeah.
to generate something in relation to my pure impulse. It started to say like, well, wait a minute, they can't win. That's not right. Like my pure impulse and my desire should have some access. And again, it's like, well, yeah, it does, Andy. It's just a question of, do you want to go that distance? And
Right.
um and so that idea, that self, you can see it in the book. As the guy who read the book, you're like, no, that's really what a lot of ways that's what the book is about. And so
Yeah.
I think that God, you may agree with me here, or whatever the universe, the um the unconscious synchronicity, grid map, what have you, if you take some of those synchronicities and be very bold with them, um, sometimes it works out well. And so I had
Mhm.
just kind of been picking around in the survival, kind of the buffet of what's out there. Like, well, I could take some handgun training, or I could maybe shoot long distance or what have you. And I ended up doing like all of those things and
Interesting.
more. I had and I still have no like military background. I never wanted to join the military.
Mhm.
I don't know. There's many things about it I like, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my life for people that I don't admire, frankly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I hear you.
and and I do admire many of, I'm doing the whole thing, but I do actually have friends that are, veterans, and I do admire them. And so, just to clarify, had that guy been leading me into war, like my friend Clay Martin, absolutely, call me tomorrow and I'll go to war with you. But
Mm.
at the time, my understanding was different. So I had a desire to kind of pick up a lot of those things that guys don't get unless you. And so it turns out at that time, the way that the GWAT was coming together, and those veterans were cycling back, a lot of those guys were teaching courses um, to civilians, and I kind of just wended my way through a whole curriculum, and I wound up at tracking for many many reasons. It's very interesting. I like a lot of people. I was the romanticism of it has some interest, but yeah, like I'll just cut it off there before I really go overboard. But I ended up taking classes from a number of like really, really great instructors that no one's ever heard of, and spent years out there all over America doing it and teaching people how to do it. So it absolutely informs, the novel.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people that have found King of Dogs have viewed it as kind of like a manual of sorts, which it was never intended. Like I never thought at all. Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
it's almost insulting, because I'm like you and I are talking about like, dude, I'm going to I'm going to the mat on this thing
Right.
to build a beautiful sentence for you. You could put all the tracking stuff in a manual and that's fine. So,
Uh, yeah, yeah, but it does help to. I mean, it does help to have that level of detail as authenticity. But it also, I mean, I think there's a way that a person might think about sort of research for a writing project as being like, oh, it's just so I can get the details right, and that's not quite what it is. I mean, unless you've delved into that terrain that to some degree that you're going to be writing about, it's like you won't even really know which directions make sense for the thing to go. It really, and I think different sorts of projects probably require more or less levels of research, but that no, and it totally comes across. It totally comes across on the page. I want to talk a little bit about just sort of survival stuff with you, and not to get into like a YouTube talking head video about somebody like, here's the top 3 things you need to know. But so I guess one question I've got is, so did you, and you don't have to get too personal on this if you don't want to, but like, was that stuff all brand new to you, or did you kind of grow up with some level of being in the outdoors kind of stuff?
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of outdoor experience. Um,
Hmm.
it's kind of a cliche, like in Oregon, I mean, we go out, rain, or shine, and like we always go to the beach, we'd always go to the mountains, did tons of camping. But I grew up in a house where we didn't own a gun,
Mm.
which also isn't uncommon, or wasn't at that point out here. So I didn't have what there was plenty of like friends growing up whose dads took them hunting and things like that, but I didn't really have that. Um, I just had to kind of accept like, oh well, I feel like this is a deficiency as a man, not having some familiarity with this. And then I found that maybe I had a knack for some of it, and I don't have a lot of interest in some of the survival things. I've done it all. I've done all of the like the whole, they call it like abo, primitive stuff into really technological stuff, in terms of survival. And it's I what I really end up liking is just being out there. It is almost enough. Like I'm not a guy who needs to climb this mountain, or I hike like every day. But again, I think that this may be one of these points where I don't understand the world very well, because that's just what I do. Like I've been
Mm.
hiking, like 100 days a year for, I don't know, most of my life. But we just call it going for a walk, right? And
Right,
then,
right.
but we live in a world where they talk about the kids in Detroit or Baltimore or whatever who've literally have never been outside of Baltimore, and they're like 40 years old. It's wow, that sucks,
Wild.
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
did
interesting.
that have,
I think yeah, no, this is good. Cuz I think of so I kind of grew up not super dissimilar from that. My dad was a hunter, and he sort of taught us how to hunt, and I don't hunt anymore. I may one day return to it. Um, I like the idea of having just for the food, actually, not even so
yeah.
much for the sort of recreational aspect, but it would be nice to have a couple 100 pounds of meat, of good meat, exactly where it came from, etc. But uh, I also I was an Eagle Scout, and you know when I was a kid, I didn't think that much of it. I was just in the Boy Scouts, and then we did it, and I kind of thought it was fun, and I didn't actually realize that but that by the end of it, I had actually, I'm not going to say I had accrued some masterful level of survival skills, but I did realize after I got out of it and then I would go camping with friends and stuff like that, it was like, oh, you guys have no idea what the hell's going on out here.
Right, right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if you'd be dead in 24 hours if you didn't like bring everything with you that you needed.
That
And
is
and
the
they're like,
yeah.
oh, yeah. I was like, oh, okay. I actually do know a few. I know some of the basics at least, and and then since then, in more recent years, I've really decided that like, you know, we were DMing and I was saying that I kind of like vacillate between, everything's going to be just fine and holy shit, like basically King of Dogs world's going to happen. There's going to be some kind of takeover, or there's going to be an EMP, or there's going to be an actual plague that wipes out 50%, something. And you're going to have to be sort of, economic collapse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many different
Yeah.
possible scenarios. and I don't want to be sort of paranoid, overly paranoid. I don't want to live my life in fear, but I did kind of realize that like one of the things, whatever happens, one of the things that's portable from the world you're in now to that world is skills. Is and there's a wide range of them. Most of them fall under this sort of survival umbrella. But you know, from starting a fire to knowing the basics of how to use a gun to, you know, small engine repair, even like there's a whole range of little odds and ends that are incredibly unincentivized now. There's like no
Yeah.
day to day. It doesn't seem like there's any day to day reason to know how to do any of these things, and I think that does end up that does lead to a certain degree of like learned helplessness more generally. I think if you don't know how to do anything physical in the actual world, there's some level in your brain, like you mentioned, you wanted to like learn how to use guns because you're like, I feel like I probably should know how to do
Yeah.
that. I think I think I think most people, if you don't know how to do any of this stuff, there is like a level of your brain that you kind of know you're
Yes.
incompetent or something, or you know you're a potential victim or something.
Absolutely. There has to
Yeah.
be. I 100%,
Right.
sorry to interrupt you if I was
No, no,
interrupting you.
no. But please. Yeah.
You do, I've seen, I can't remember the exact argument right now, but it was something to the effect of um that very fact of like a subconscious understanding of where your ability to survive really ends. Um Absolutely is this unspoken, it's a dictate. Like it's not just a thing like it's something that actuarials are leveraging on. Like they know that whatever the numbers would, you just make some up, like 80% of, let's say, women, just pick on women because why not? They don't get picked on enough. I'm joking, everybody. But like you see this too in advertising, like for single women, they'll like a home repair thing. You know, they'll try to make this either like a rah rah, go girl, you can do it. Just give us $400 and you can take this class, even though the repair is like $6 in free video on YouTube.
Right.
But or they'll just kind of ride that level of whatever the term would be here, like you said, learned helplessness. You're sort of accepting like, well, fuck, I have to shell out for this, or I have to find somebody to help me.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think you could, it's incalculable how incalculable, is that how you say that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that is a massive unspoken piece of what's happening now. And for
Mhm.
men, maybe even more than women. Because
Yeah.
almost, I would say, I don't know what the percentage is, but everybody, we're in this position. We were talking about like kind of unspoken man stuff earlier,
Yeah.
where even though maybe we live in this newfangled society, I think that every dude comes to realize that, say you're out with your wife, you know, your girlfriend, if something happens and you don't man up in the kind of traditional expected way, which is either protect her or in some way protect her basically,
Hmm.
and hopefully save some face, that's going to have an impact. She may be
Hmm.
able to get over it, but I personally, you know, I would say most women probably are going to look down on you. Like if you can't just do basic shit like, I don't know, carry the groceries in, sure, but escalate that up, you know, okay, so there's a confrontation. How do I handle this? And then, I mean, to say that some of the like the extra policing and surveillance that we just kind of acquiesce to isn't in some way kind of tacitly accepted. Well, I don't know. It's kind of nice that those guys are dealing with that shit because I don't know how to do it,
I don't.
you know, and I don't
Right.
want to, which isn't almost, I almost don't want to like, I know people like this. Like I know a lot of men like that and I don't not like them. Um, I, but it's hard to respect them once you
Yeah.
realize that that's the game. you
Well,
know?
I think of this is I think it was on Reddit, but I think of this like periodically. There was a Reddit post, and it was by a woman who she was sort of asking for help from the community to just give her a sanity check, and apparently, if I remember the story right, I don't know if it was just her and her husband or if there was a child involved too. There might have been a small child involved. But apparently they were like hanging out in their backyard, and a dog jumped over the fence and attacked them. And the man just ran. And she was like afterwards, she was like, I feel really bad, but like I don't think I can be married to him anymore. Like I see him as an entirely different person now. And for all the sort of egalitarian progress and, breaking down of gender, whatever, like
Yeah,
there's some real truth that like that guy should have gotten the way between that dog and his wife.
absolutely. Yep.
And maybe he would have, and the thing is, maybe he wouldn't have been able to do much, right? Maybe that dog would have torn him apart, and he wouldn't have been able to actually prevent anything. But at the end of the
Right.
day, at least at
At
least he would
least
have
he
had
tried.
he
Yeah.
tried. He had the courage. He didn't back down. He didn't run away. So there's some real there's some real there's some real truth to that, I think. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think
So
it's gonna. I'm sorry to
I don't
interrupt
think
you
it's going
there.
to change either. Yeah.
I don't think. I wonder sometimes, like, if it did, I think that would probably be the end of our species. I think that's the kind of thing we're fucking around with when we do that. I agree
Right.
too. Even if the guy had just sacrificed an arm and
Hmm.
held it off and made a valiant attempt,
Hmm.
I you may be referring to here the same post that I'm thinking of, and I think it maybe gets worse where, or maybe there's a variation where the woman's like, I can't fuck him anymore.
Right.
Like
There's that too.
and it's like, well, no, of course she can. Like, bro,
Yeah.
that's like not everything we can't make everything easy for you. Like you do
Right.
have to. Yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's no upshot to being like actually harmless as a guy, right? Being like, right, the the inability to inflict harm, right? The inability there's really no upshot to that. And I think there is like this thing, and and I'm not saying this is like some tough guy by any means, like I'm probably physical confrontation, I'm probably in the lower half, but to pretend that it's irrelevant is, I think, where you sort of get into trouble, right? And to pretend that these things don't matter, and it's kind of part of the. And again, like, to me, that we're still talking about King of Dogs, actually, to me.
yeah.
There's because there's like there's an expectation of things sort of being easier, and that you'll never have to, as time goes on, you won't have to, there'll be no obligations on you that you didn't agree to fully. And that's just not the case. Like, just your existence is going to require certain things of you. And it's cool that, like, you don't have to fight wolves with a spear anymore, like, on a regular basis. Like, that's awesome.
It's a huge time
Right?
saver.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, it's great. Those comforts are great. They're all of them do, every little one of them is sort of a crutch to a certain degree. And again, that's okay. It's not that you're supposed to do everything the hard way, but there is a way, I think, where you can sort of lose touch with, and I don't even know that that's a male or female thing. You can sort of lose touch with something significant and meaningful about yourself, because you've outsourced all of the challenge in your life out to something else. Another person takes care of it, and an app takes care of it. And you're sort of right. Like, it was, you kind of brought up the sort of police state element. There is like this aspect where it's like, well, if people can't take care of themselves, then something's going to come in and take care. Like, the global police state will come in and take care of you. You
yeah,
know, it kind of ties into like this thing that I feel like what's going on sort of politically and culturally, this thing that I feel like I'm learning right now and like really starting to understand. And maybe I always kind of knew this on one level, but like what I'm starting to really realize is if you don't sort of take care of the things that you're responsible for, something else will come in and take care of them in a way that you do not like. Like
That's right.
the the problem will be solved, and
Yep.
it's and if you know if you just leave it to somebody else, it's not gonna you're not gonna like how it gets taken care of. And I'm starting to see how true this is in like everything basically. And yeah, like if you don't take care of your children, well, the state will end up taking care of them, and you're
Right.
not going to like how that goes. And just follow that down the line to every other little thing. Yeah. Um.
I'd like to hear you.
So
I'd like to hear you do it. Sorry,
no,
you should
go
do a.
ahead.
I don't know if you do monologues on here, but I don't know. Write a post or something because I think you're onto something from maybe your own unique angle. I see that observation in in a number of these little like niche internet areas. You know, like
Hmm.
Bitcoiners and whatnot are kind of hip to that. I think
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems to be, and I don't want to get too far into like political stuff, but I see it in that frame too. It's like, yeah, you hate that because you were supposed to take care of that, and now this thing's taking care of it instead, and it's not going the way you
Right.
want.
Yeah.
you know, but like
Yep.
if you would have taken care of it 5 years ago, then you wouldn't have to deal with this.
Yep.
Um, one thing I don't think I've sort of captured in sort of my raves about this book, or maybe I kind of did, is there is this element, the the sort of interiority of Grayson, the for to use a to use a graduate school term, but the there are these moments. Grayson dreams, and that's part of the book. That's part of the
Yeah.
feel of the book, and it's also part of the the energy of the book. There's a great moment fairly early on. I don't want to spoil too much about the book, and I don't think this does, but you know, at some point the shooting starts, right? And
Yeah.
in any great action story, at some point the shooting starts, and Grayson has been very well prepared for this, except that basically when the shooting starts, he's been dosed with psilocybin mushrooms. I think I'm remembering that correctly, right? Um,
Yes.
by this guy Ben, who's sort of like a good avatar of kind of like a useless dude, useless, mostly well-meaning, but kind of a useless dude. Um, and I was really impressed with those moments, the dream moments, the psilocybin, the hallucination moments.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, and I'm kind of just curious, like, where do you feel? Do you do those moments come to you sort of in like in the writing in a flow state, or do you feel like you have to very carefully put those together? Is that a different feel to write a scene like a dream scene versus writing, more action real world scene? How do those two things relate?
That's a good question. I think that well, maybe in some ways like the action stuff is it's kind of logical in the sense that logic sort of pertains to the material world, and
Hmm.
bullets are whizzing, bodies are being maneuvered around, explosions and trucks and things like there's not a lot of time in that, to sort of I kind of try and ride that line where I have this view, I talk about it sometimes. It's just a word I made up called ultra natural or ultra nature. And it's basically like panentheism, where maybe the final truth about our conditions here is that God is really in every little thing, and we do have this incredible ride, and we too are this is a familiar idea, but maybe we lack a way to sort of see or to manage the world where the two intersect, because if you stand in front of the bus, dude, like all the meditation in the world, at least as far as I know, is not going to prevent the bus from. And we have this kind of, that's what I mean by we seem to not be able to um, reconcile these two. But when I'm writing, this is pertinent. So the way that it's pertinent is there is a channeling aspect or something like it. We can lower the level of the woo and say,
Mhm.
like the trance state or the deep work or whatever begins after about 15 minutes of focus. And then, you can kind of get into something. And that's all probably true. What I noticed though is that when you really decide to become something in your life, as opposed to sort of maybe it has to do with the certification thing, like, hey, I'm a lawyer. Like, so what, dude? If if you live a thing and it becomes who you are, I think a huge part of the writing, what I'm trying to say is it actually happens away from the computer. And what I do when I come to the computer is I'm sort of clearing all of that other shit that happens and trying to be quiet. And then from there, it's like a level of discernment. It's almost like those witching,
Mhm.
those water witchers. You're
Yeah.
just kind of like feeling around, and then it's obvious, like, okay, that's the thing. So what does this mean in terms of, with respect to King of Dogs and those dream sequences and maybe there's some craft stuff that I would have to take credit for in terms of maybe how you blend those worlds and how uh, and some of the relevant symbolism overlaps and those things. Those are just you sitting there at the last few drafts going, oh fuck, that fits with this over here, and I didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
But in actually writing it, some of those dreams are real dreams I had, which is one way of answering the question. And of course, I have no lack of experience with psychedelics, but I've never been shot at,
Mm.
under psychedelics. It's just me trying to kind of say, how would I react to that maybe? And then over time, I think that you sleep with that problem, a couple weeks or months or years. You may agree with this. I don't know. I think it's pretty much true is you have these fallow periods as a creative person. Um, I'm almost certain that your daemon, whatever this thing is off in another realm, working a bunch of stuff out for you, and then it's us that is like, oh, do I want to take on the burden of translating this thing, like pulling it in from that world to this, and oftentimes, um, I hear people say like that's how they measure the success of their work is, well, I had that vision and I translated it exactly as I'd hoped, so it's good.
Mhm.
Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. But it's just really all to say that I think that there's something to this idea of when you commit to something fully, many energies and powers begin to reveal themselves to you, and it becomes a different sort of process or game or whatever kind of set of behaviors to manifest that thing on the page for somebody to read 5, 10 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Yeah. Yeah. Now this makes. Yeah, I loved all that. I'm nodding along to all of that. I I, I have a sort of a preliminary working hypothesis, and I want to see if it's true for you. Do have you seen this thing where like it goes around the internet, you get the five different apples and the one's like invisible all the way up to like a full apple, and it's like which one can you visualize in your head?
Yeah.
Do you have a strong like mental imagery, would you say, or like where would
Oh,
you be on that scale?
dude, I would be like on a whole other level. When people
Yeah.
show me that stuff, it's like Goodwill Hunting. It's like, do you have any fucking idea how easy this is for me? I can take
Okay.
I can take the apple. I've done this a few times to actually confirm that I'm not delusional. I can take the apple and like turn it into a star and separate it and open it and flip it inside out, and I can go 360 all the way around it. There's no, almost I've gotten bored with I pushed it so far where I was like, I don't know, it's kind of self-indulgent at this point. Like there's nothing that I cannot see if I
Yeah.
try.
See, this validates it entirely. My
Okay.
working theory is that even more, maybe not even more, perhaps as much as a visual artist, that talented fiction writers are have very strong visual, whatever we call this, mental imagery, an ability to conjure images, and particularly manipulate them. Like my image memory isn't particularly strong. Like if you're like, what does something look like 5 years ago? I might not remember it, but if it's sort of like imagine this thing, I can do that totally.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Hmm.
interesting. And I think there's I don't know what exactly that relationship is though, because I think uh, at a passing glance that might have nothing to do with writing fiction, but I actually think somehow these are these are correlated abilities in some way.
I think they have to, well, if someone asked me like how would like theoretically correlate them,
Yeah.
um, you know how people there's the issue of you're dealing with people like and hearts and blood at a certain point,
Mhm.
and we have like at the end of the day, what matters? Well, if I got to go today, I want to give my loved ones a hug, I want to cry with them,
Mhm.
and that's it. Like that's literally the best that it can get for me. And you when you're sitting there at like 2 a.m. or whatever, 3 a.m., trying to, come up with something maybe for a career as a writer, or just to do the job. Um, Having to deeply imagine that thing, in some ways, what I'm trying to drive to is this place where that ability to visualize is usually placed over in the spurgy kind of like, like autistic-y sort of ideas, and that's fine. Like,
Mhm.
but without that ability, um, the world doesn't function. And maybe we're just back to, like masculine, feminine sorts of maybe hyper reductive ideals or whatever. But um, to go back again to your point earlier about how, um, I think you were kind of speaking towards how respect, um, for oneself as a man is kind of an unspoken. It's not as if there's a rule book, but there are rules, and that's how it is, and it's not negotiable. And
Right.
maybe sometimes, sounds like you had a good involved dad, and so did I. Like I had a real dad who, is still there to this day. Like,
Mhm.
is he perfect? Not even fucking close. But
Right.
he did I think the best that he could do. And so,
Same.
and he's very much like on the hyper cerebral side.
Mm.
And I mean, to a point where it's kind of it's pretty far out there. But
That's
when
cool.
I've watched him like throughout my life, and it's always an issue of like, what does he love? Like, what does he actually like? What makes him get up at 4 a.m. to go to this dog shit job for 25 fucking years is really one big question for me.
Right.
And I think that maybe in some ways it is this ability to visualize for yourself these interrelationships,
Mm.
and maybe they do look like hyper objects, like like transcendental ideals or whatever, like uh, sun and honor and duty. But that's just how I think men actually process the world, because we too live with this burden of, well, I could go at any minute because if the dog comes over the fence, like
Yeah.
I'm out. I'm going all in. I'm
Right.
shoving a table leg up this thing's ass, and then I'm gonna
Right.
fucking choke it to death. And it's like, I mean, that's how I really am. Like,
Mhm.
you know, I don't mean to go off on some weird tangent, but when we talk like this, all of these memories and examples flood forward for me, like
Mhm.
in relation to my kids and wife. And to say that, to reduce it to technique is, I think, a kind of in the way that maybe an MFA program that wants to pump out, uh, students that maybe can't write great novels would want to do. I- And I know there are a lot of actually great novelists that went to MFA programs, but I'm just saying that
Yeah.
to
No, I
try
get
and
it.
reduce, you know, you get it. I know you
Yeah.
get it. I'm
Yeah.
just trying
Yeah.
um, to try and reduce it to this technique. Just maybe the way to say this, I'm sorry for babbling, but is that the job of the novelist is actually to confront all of these weird uncertainties, paradoxes, shit left on the table, messiness, and then convert that in a package that I feel good about and I'm willing to spend years of my life doing, and hopefully will give you, Brad, some return, like on your 18 hours that it takes you to invest in that book. And so
Right.
maybe what's happening is my visualization power is linking with your visualization power, on the grid. And then you're just like, hey, thanks for that image, Andy. I can now
Right.
take this and plunge this into my whole other mainframe of topics and experiences and questions. Um, and last
Yeah.
thing I will say on that is, like, when you asked maybe what are you most proud of, some of the images in that book I think are, not to toot my own horn, but in King of Dogs are pretty good. I would place them
Yeah.
as, like, I'd put them up against Quentin Tarantino or something, like, all day and just grab my balls in front of him, like they're that good. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
you know.
No, you're right. You're right. I'm actually, I'm not gonna do it here, but I'm gonna read. I got, unless there's one you recommend, I've picked one out. I'm gonna read and tag at the end of this episode so people get a taste. Because I totally agree with you. Some of the imagery in this is fantastic, and it's part of the reason why I wanted to ask you this question. I was like, I know he can like concoct a world in his head for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah, yeah.
Thank
It's
you.
it's that's part of the joy of the process of writing, sort of, is coming up with these. And then sometimes for me anyway, one sort of sticks, and it's sort of like I don't know exactly where that came from, but it can't get. It's like if you ever get exposed to a really bad smell, and then like later in the day you smell it. It's kind of like that, but visually, where it's like it sticks in your head and it just kind of keeps coming back and coming back and coming back. And sometimes for me, the writing process is like me just figuring out what the hell was even relevant about that image. Like, why did it keep coming back to me and coming back to me? And eventually sort of find a home for it and a context for it and a space where it makes sense. And you're like, that's what it's for. It was a puzzle piece. And I had to build the whole rest of the puzzle to see what that thing was for. Yeah. As we we're gonna kind of wind down here, but the one thing I like doing in these conversations is ask you for a couple of books out of your personal canon. So, what are some books that are, popular, not so popular, whatever, but some books that are meaningful to you?
Yeah. When I think of, I just think off the top of my head. I don't really have, any formal list, but yeah, Fear and Loathing, um, in Las Vegas. I read that. My dad gave me
Oh wow.
his tattered copy from whenever that was, 1974 or something,
Wow.
and it dissolved in my hands. I read it when I was probably 15, 16 years old. And that it absolutely changed the course of my life. I think that is a masterpiece in many ways of a couple different, it's not a novel necessarily, but is it? I don't know. That I don't think I'll ever, let go of as like a touchstone sort of thing.
I love that book. Yeah.
Castaneda's third book, The Journey to Ixtlan, probably was obsessed with that for I don't know, the better part of a decade. That too sort of seemed to kick me in a direction that I had to wrestle with for a long time. Um,
So remind me. I've read. I think I read Journey. They all kind of blend together for me a little bit. The
yeah,
the the Castaneda books. So what? Where is he at? Like in the third one, sort of roughly speaking, where is the Castaneda? Where is Castaneda in?
yeah. I think he's sort of at the he's not because in four, which is the other. I think his two best are Journey to Ixalan and Tales of Power. And Tales of Power, I
Okay.
think, is the one where he lets go of Don Juan, or
Okay.
Don Juan
Okay.
lets go of
That's
him.
yeah.
And so Journey to Ixalan has the most kind of it has a sense of like completion about it. Like maybe this is a real initiatory description of some sort of process. Um, that's where he talks about not doing and I think seeing and a couple other these kind of fanciful techniques that he developed. He had, I mean, I don't think you guys did with your other podcast, you know, you did some stuff on him. And
We did. Yeah.
I feel like he may have just like soiled his own nest too much for him to ever quite be appreciated in the way that he is. He's kind of a nasty person, but I some of his from a literary like point of view, I mean he's one of the best of that century in my opinion because and I don't even much care if it's true or not or whatever. I
Right.
do care that he was kind of an immoral, kind of a shitbird person.
No.
But man, I mean, his ability to kind of like put something in front of you and say, "What do you think? Is that real?" was like shit, dude. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did John Gennaro really like use like a laser like a umbilicus light bar or light string or something to swing
Right.
across the canyon?
Right.
Anyway, you can tell that that still
Yeah.
messes with me. Um,
Yeah. No, it's great stuff. Yeah, wait, the Castaneda thing is really interesting because I agree with you. I think I don't know. I definitely didn't get to Tales of Power. I'm pretty sure what I've read is the first three, and yeah, they're incredible. And you can get kind of lost in the like, is it real or is it not? The question is kind of irrelevant to me in a way. Uh, but there is a power to that, and he was sort of setting up a whole new,
yeah,
what would you even call it, there's like a whole new sort of paradigm in that, and I kind of like that. It's questionable whether or not it happened because that seems like it opens this space up in which you can't you can't dismiss it entirely, but you struggle to take it all on board at the same time, so it leaves you in this sort of in between space that's kind of awesome.
it is. It's kind of awesome. It's almost
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
good evil. It's like evil,
Yeah.
but somehow good.
Yeah.
It's truly that's what I mean. Like there's something just singular that I don't know of anyone else who has done it quite the way that he did it. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm not alone in that. You know,
Yeah.
I don't to throw a couple more out there, like the Border trilogy for me is totally um, massive.
Yeah.
After those three, it probably kind of takes a step down, you know, in terms of
Mm.
just there's tons of great books, there's tons of stuff I love, but
Yeah.
for some reason those three are pretty influential.
Yeah, I've been the the crossing has been I've read that once. I've read All the Pretty Horses a number of times. Um, but I only read The Crossing once, and it's been calling to me for like a year now that to reread it. I've really just got to pick it up and reread it. There's something so potent. The whole wolf thing is so powerful. Like it just
Yeah.
as a talking about just as a sort of symbol. It's as soon as you like that premise of that, like the boy takes a wolf across the border. It's like, oh yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, yeah, and he pulls it
you
off. I
know,
mean, God,
right,
it's
right,
yeah,
right. Yeah,
yep,
that's a yeah, and I think you're right. I think somehow there's I don't know if it's like there's fewer firework. Like I have this idea about this sort of analogy about stories. thinking about them in terms of thought about this sitting around a fire one day, and I of course, and I think it's true. I think there's a way in like a story has these three big components. It's got the sort of the heat and the light, which is sort of like the premise, and you could refer to it as like the gimmick, even like what is attractive about it from a distance, right? Is and so, you know, Blood Meridian. It's like, oh, it's the most violent Western you've ever heard of. Like, oh, okay. And it's got this, you know, perhaps this demonic villain as the antagonist. Like from a distance, that's got its appeal to it. And
Yeah.
then like the next level of a story to me is like the structure of the fire, you know, a teepee or a log cabin or whatever. It's like, how is it put together so that it will sustain itself? And then below that, you've got the coals, which is like the heat, the energy that can keeps the thing going. And I think somehow in McCarthy's work, like the road and Blood Meridian sort of stand out more. And I think it's because that outer level is like, I don't want to. I'm going to say the word gimmicky, and it's going to sound like I'm dismissing it because I think those are great books. But they're more instantly sort of eye catching. It's like, oh, it's the apocalypse, and this guy's, you know,
Yeah.
oh, you know, and then the border trilogy, the gimmick, the flames. It's a little subtler, but like when you get down to what's actually driving it, it's as profound or more profound than the other stuff. So
Oh, that
I think,
yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's brilliantly
yeah,
put, actually. Yeah.
yeah,
The
thanks, man.
road,
Yeah,
yeah, really, I kept thinking of it's like it's the sizzle, as they say with the advertise, but
yeah,
also in Hollywood they call it something like, at least everything changes down there, but they said
yeah,
like, is it high concept? Is it high
right.
concept? Those are
Mhm.
hugely high concepts. So there must be
Right.
like a real value to um, that top layer, the
Yeah,
light.
because you can put it on a movie poster or whatever, you know, and it again, it just gets like, and it doesn't mean it doesn't mean just because it's so attractive at that level, it's bad by any means.
No,
It's just
no.
different pieces have their strengths sort of in different places. Is all. So yeah, the border trilogy. Yeah, and we might go, you know, 100 years in the future, and the border trilogy is the only McCarthy work that people remember. I don't know. You
It
never
might
know.
be.
You never know. You never know
Yeah.
how these things work. Well, Andrew, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. People,
Thank
go
you.
out, buy King of Dogs. If you can, support Andrew's efforts on Crowbar, trying to raise some funds to get this thing out into the world. You will not regret supporting a great artist. And you know, follow. I'll have links to Andrew's social media in the show notes. Follow him wherever you follow people, and also check out Warhorse for sure. And Andrew,
Yeah.
anything else we should be plugging?
No, you've plugged
No.
everything. Thank you
Okay.
very much. I
Of
appreciate
course,
it.
man. Of course. All right, folks. Coming up soon. I'm talking the Magus with Alexandru Constantine from Black Ibis, the Black Ibis Social Club. I'm talking American Tabloid with Jacob Everett, and what's the other one?
Great book.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. I've never read it before. I'm getting the hang of the style. It took me about 50 pages or so before I was like, wait, he's really writing like this? Oh, okay. And it's not like I didn't like it, but it was like, wait, this is what he's doing? Oh, okay. It just took me a minute to like catch up to his register. And then Gene Wolfe's Shadow of the Torturer with the great Ben Thomas. So you guys can look forward to that in the coming weeks, and I'll see y'all later. The breeze picked up. He stuck the sheathed knife back in his waistband. Big Dipper, North Star. He pivoted and set out east. When his natural night vision got settled in, he found a deer trail and walked it toward a yet further mesa. The mesa, he knew, would drop onto the highway at some point. The highway, he knew, would take him to Castle Valley. After that, he didn't know. At each drop or rise in the chaparral, the mesa appeared farther away. Hallucinations were just fine with him, and they came austere and direct. Off to his left, in the mad light of the moon refracting in the silica and shimmering on the thorns of silver shala and prickly pear, it seemed something horned, Draugr or Magus, was matching him step for step, playing with him, making mincing slashes in the blue air with the pronged horns. As Grayson trundled forward, delirious and parched, the trail beneath his feet stretched and wobbled in scintillating shadows. He kept his eyes fixed on the trail, and at some point the landscape began to glow with a green fire that grew contiguous, quickening between the gray tufts of sedge grass and the starveling pines. The trail undulated and flared out to the looping twists of manzanita trunks and became so bright that he stopped and submitted to stare at one of these small, wind-twisted trees burning with secret light. After a while, he marched on and swung both arms in a kind of locomotive unison that forced propulsion to his mindless feet. This rhythm came to feel essential, critical even. Orion's belt, Cassiopeia, move on. His legs felt absent, almost external, as if some vestibular circuit between his awareness, his spine, and the crystal mineral ground was overtaking or merging with his will. Vague bits of what he recognized as his authentic being, his true depths, floated in like sleeping cranes or egrets adrift on the waved surface of his mind. But they were nothing on the order of proper thoughts and seemed rather to be signals transmitted over great distance. And once received in consciousness, these missives required translation from an older language to his own. The visual feast calmed and left just the compulsion to make the coordinated motion of his feet and breath and the swinging hands continue to exist. Stillness is not death, he thought, but keep moving nonetheless. Let the engine run whatever be the price. You pay on both ends, either in the day by the day's measure or by the night with its oddities and irreducibility, its broken vows and cork lights.
Have you ever heard about Willie the Weeper? Had a job as a chimney sweeper. He had the dope habit and he had his bad. Listen while I tell you about a dream he had. He went down to the dope shop one Saturday night. He knew the lights would all be burning bright. Well, I guess he smoked a dozen pills or more. When he woke up, he was on a foreign shore. The Queen of Sheba was the first he met. She called him lovey-dovey and honey pet. She gave him a great big automobile with a diamond headlight and a golden wheel. Down in Honolulu, Willie fell in a trance, seeing the dusky beauties do the hula dance. His sweetie got in jail and Willie sure did shout when he got the news that she had wiggled out. He landed with a splash in the river Nile, riding on a sea-going crocodile. He winked at Cleopatra, she said, ain't he a sight? He said, how about a date for next Saturday night? He had 1,000,000 cattle and he had 1,000,000 sheep, had 1,000,000 vessels on the ocean deep, had $1,000,000 all in nickels and dimes. Well, he knew because he counted it 1,000 times. He landed in New York one evening late. He asked his sugar for an after date, started to kiss her and she started to pout when bang, bang, and the dope gave